at the forefront for everybody, and we are seeing a substantial increase in mental health calls. And I don't know if there's no predictable factors in this, it's just the situations, and these generally result in us having to take people to the hospital so that doctor can evaluate them because there's something serious going on at that particular time. So I'm hoping that we can get a better handle on that. We're using different referral systems, trying to encourage people to use counseling and different things like that. Victim services have gone up, everybody's using it, and our prisoners, we're having a bit of an issue with guarding, so we're having to transport our prisoners down to Tofino. We're trying to work that out as well. So quickly, because I don't want to take up too much time, just a couple things from us. Hopefully this isn't going to be a contentious topic, but we are looking for volunteers. We're always looking for volunteers. We've been trying to initiate the Speed Watch program because we know that in certain areas it's important that people are speeding through different playground zones. And we want to educate people. We want to have that sort of system out there to help educate, to bring it down. We don't want to have to be the strong iron fist doing enforcement every time because, in my opinion, it doesn't accomplish anything. It should be a last resort. So please, if you're so inclined, we are looking for volunteers for Speedwatch. Our auxiliary program has started up again. So we are looking for volunteers for the auxiliary program. We'd love to see that happen again. It was a great volunteer program for us. Another thing quickly, Cops for Cancer. The barbecue is happening on September 29th at the Co-op. The Co-op, as per usual, has done a great job of sponsoring and providing supplies, so that's a positive as well. And probably my last thing I'll quickly ask for is if anybody's interested, we are looking for guards. It's a paid position, and if you're so inclined, please come down to the attachment and we will start the process. If we have a couple minutes, I'd love to introduce Constable Harry, if that's okay. Sure. Come on up, Yannick. As part of my thing, I just wanted everybody to get to meet the police officers that are in your in the community. And Mr. Harry here's been he's our Indigenous Police Service member. He's been doing a great job. Been a long time member. I'll let Yannick take over.
Hi, my name is Yannick. I know some of you. I've been a member of RCMP for almost 22 years, and I've been here for a little over almost 4.5. And it's been a great honor and a pleasure serving this community and the Indigenous communities in the area. I really enjoyed it. It's been one of my favorite spots. I've been coast to coast in BC, Alberta, Ontario, and Nova Scotia. So this has been one of my favorite spots, or the favorite spot, really. And if you watch YukiTube, you know I've been busy investigating the illegal betting with the local soapbox derby this year. Did you see that? Just silly, but anyway. But no, it's been a pleasure. So thank you very much.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Sorry, before I wrap it up, does anybody have any questions, concerns, comments? Yes?
Questions from council? Councillor Hoare?
Okay, bear with my voice. You were saying that you're fighting to keep the impaired driving. Would a letter from council give you any help, support?
It would. It's not so much that it's an internal process, but it would anything is always great for support because it's just a change in upper management that's causing some problems, but we're trying our hardest to fight. But anything like that is always appreciative.
I just figured that any way in which we could help would be a good one. So
yeah, that would be great. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Are you making a motion for a letter of support?
I will make that motion if somebody speaks it.
Letter of support for the RCMP for impaired driving. Could I have a seconder?
I'll second that one.
Councillor Kennington. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, and that carries.
Oh, I've got another one.
Yes, Councillor Hoare.
person. I'm supposed to not be talking. The Cops for Cancer barbecue, that's like a lunch barbecue, right, on the 29th?
Correct. It'll be from 11 to 2.
Okay. I mean, I say that because I know I'm supplying onions and tomatoes and things.
I understand.
I just want to put out my personal request because I am a big fan of caramelized onions on my hamburger.
Absolutely.
I hear Rick said he was going to come do this for us.
There you go. So I'm just going to slide that out there into the ether.
Great. Any other questions from council? I have a couple myself. No? I noticed break and enters are up quite a bit. There's 12 year to date compared to 7 previous year.
Again, sometimes, like I said, I would have, and I've highlighted things that I think need to be talked about. That one, again, I believe is just another, the issue is when you have previous detachment commanders, when they score these type of files, they don't necessarily score them right. So this may be more indicative of just proper file scoring that should be happening. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's a rash of break and enters. That's year to date. It's we've had a couple interesting break and enters, to say the least, but not necessarily like there hasn't been like this consistent rash where those would be things we'd be announcing right away and wanting the community to be aware of it and hopefully help us if they can see something.
So is your feeling that these are transient people that are doing this?
There's always a possibility it could be. I can't speak on it because some are unsolved and some we have suspects on, and unfortunately, but yes, there is an element that transient people could be involved in these.
So lock your doors, everybody. And the other one I had a question about was mischief obstructing enjoyment. I'm not quite sure what that means.
No, absolutely. Actually, there's a lot of different things under the criminal code that entail for like liquor-related offenses. So there's causing a disturbance, which is done in a public place when somebody complains. And that's, say, for instance, a liquor-related offense. You have the Liquor Act. Say if we as police officers come upon somebody that's intoxicated in a public place, then we can deal with them under that. Mischief, the obstruction of enjoyment of property, is when you have somebody in a house that's causing issues because they're intoxicated and the person wants them out.
Great, thank you. And my last question was on the other page, victim services referral declined. So is that where you've referred somebody to victim services, but they have declined to take that opportunity?
Yes, we offer it, and we ask them if they'd like it, and if they choose, we'll forward it to our victim service worker. If they don't, then we just mark it as declined. But we want to make sure that we're recording that we're making these efforts. We want people to be given all the help we can give them. So
That's great. Great. If there's no further questions, thank you for your presentation. Oh, Councillor Hoare.
I got one more quick one, and this is a personal one. So the mischief damage to property, would that include like the hit and run on my car?
no, that's called hit and run. That'd be a motor vehicle.
would be
I
a
don't
motor
capture
vehicle.
those in this particular one.
Okay.
But it's an offense under the criminal code and or motor vehicle act, depending on the type.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, it's not captured in these reports. I can't capture all the data. It'd be 16 pages long.
That's great. We do appreciate these monthly reports. It's great to see the statistics.
No, I think it's important that everybody gets an opportunity to see what's going on in their community so they understand it better.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Our next delegate is Rebecca Hurwitz, the Executive Director of Clayoquot Biosphere Trust. And Ms. Hurwitz is presenting by Zoom. We've got Ms. Hurwitz, and she can share her screen with us. Perfect. Welcome.
Thank you for having me today. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, awesome. And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for having the time. My name is Rebecca Hurwitz, and I'm the Executive Director of the Clayoquot Biosphere Trust. Here to share a short update. As many of you will know, the CBT is both the organization with the Biosphere mandate, UNESCO Biosphere, and also the local community foundation. We were formed back in 2000 with a vision to support the region to live sustainably in a healthy ecosystem with a diversified economy and strong, vibrant, and united cultures. Our board is formed with appointees and members from each of the communities and nations in the region, and so I wanted to acknowledge Sarah Butterworth and Tony Buston, who are the appointees to the board from the District of Ucluelet. Looking back on 2022, it seems like a while ago, but it's our last full year to present as a snapshot. And so I just wanted to review a few of sort of our areas of activity. As the Community Foundation, we're very much focused on supporting other organizations and researchers and educators in our region with small grants. And last year we provided almost $400,000 in grants, over 120 projects. And many of those neighborhood small grants or grants from community funds that we hold. As a UNESCO biosphere, we're very much focused on biodiversity conservation, and last year we saw also increased support to stewardship and restoration projects. And we're looking forward to hosting our first regional forum later this month with a focus on research, monitoring, stewardship, and restoration. So I hope you've all received an invitation to that event on October 18th. I also wanted to highlight that we're in the process of publishing our latest vital signs report, and so that will be out the following week, late October. It will be our 5th vital signs report for the region, and it's been 5 years since we published the report, so we're really excited to share that with the communities. And I also wanted to extend an invitation to an event that we're co-hosting at the high school this Saturday in recognition of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. This is the second annual event. It's hosted in partnership with also the Legacy of Hope Museum. And so please, we'll hope you'll join us from 10 till 3 on Saturday at the high school. So that's just an overview of some activities last year and some sort of more current updates on similar activities. But I really wanted to focus today on a unique capital project that the CDT is leading. We are building a biosphere center, and this vision was originally sort of first founded at CDT in 2014. And the center will very much be a focus on connecting people, reconciliation and healing, a space for research, education, and training, really with a focus on, yes, science, monitoring, climate action, bringing all together local organizations, educators, and researchers with this focus. Key features of the building. So in 2019, we purchased a piece of property in Tofino, and that's the top of Olson Road. We've been through the rezoning process, and we've held many open houses. Really, the vision came out of a community consultation years ago, where we asked for input on the work of the CDT as well as the location of the center, knowing that we wanted to connect all of the communities. So key features in the Biosphere Center will include some of the spaces there. So folks will walk into sort of like a visitor center where they learn about the science and research that is happening in the biosphere. Meeting spaces such as the elders room that's pictured there, an opportunity for programming around language revitalization, sharing traditional knowledge, and having small dialogues, small focused quiet conversations. And then upstairs, you can see a shot there of the education and training sort of classroom facility. And that will be available for field schools, presentations, programs, really as a space that's missing in our region, and much sort of mirroring the space that's at the Coolbit Community Center. We really acknowledge that those activity rooms have worked really well for programming, and so wanted to build something similar in the Biosphere Center. And then in the back corner there's also a community teaching kitchen. And so we really recognize the need for more culinary training in the region, as well as programming around food security. And so this teaching kitchen has been designed with input from local chefs, as well as North Island College, who are a key partner in bringing more training and education to the region. So the Biosphere Center, we were invited by Tlaloquit First Nation to locate the Biosphere Center in their territory many years ago, and we've been working with them as part of our sort of design development committee, as well as the Coastal Queer Alliance, who are doing awesome work and really have helped us to understand how we can create a safe and welcoming space for all central to the region. Here's some of the design for the Biosphere Center, both the main floor. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor or not, but when you enter, there's the visitor center. Behind that is research and collaboration space. So that will be offices for the CDT, as well as other organizations that would like to be located in there. We'll have a couple of extra desks that we can rent on a monthly or annual basis. And then the elders room and some lunchroom, things like that. Upstairs, you get a different view of that education and training space with the teaching kitchen in the back corner. just an overview of sort of the project to date. It is a $15 million project, and as I mentioned already, we have purchased 301 Olson Road and gone through the rezoning process. We've adopted what's called the Living Building Challenge, so that's a sustainable building framework, and ensures that we're really implementing that sustainable building techniques that you would expect from in a biosphere region, and showcasing those to other folks who are interested in advancing green building. We've applied for a Green and Inclusive Community Building grant with the federal government. So we applied for that in February, and we're hoping to hear news back on that in November. We've also been working hard at the provincial funding, and we're really delighted to see that in the BC budget consultation report, there was a recommendation for $5 million funding for the Biosphere Centre. That's only the sort of recommendation stage, but I'm working hard to shepherd that through the next stages of budgeting at the provincial level. And then right now we're working on an application to the REDIT grants, which is another provincial funding source, and so I'm hoping for your support in that application, and that's part of my request today. And then in terms of the capital campaign, so $4 million of that $15 million we're seeking to raise from foundations and individuals, and we're at 1.8 of the $4 million. So we're well on our way, and really excited about the federal grant and the provincial funding to sort of help tip us over and complete that goal. So all of our design work is complete, and pending, really our progress at this stage is pending funding, and we could get shovels in the ground early next year with anticipated completion in 2026. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions about the CBT in general or about the Biosphere Centre. And yeah, we just ask for your consideration of a letter of support for our REDIT application.
Thanks, Rebecca. Any council questions for Ms. Hurwitz? No? I would like to help with that letter of support, so I would move that Council authorize a letter of support for Clayoquot Biosphere Trust's Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program grant application to fund the Clayoquot Sound Biosphere Centre.
I'll second that.
Councillor Hoare seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, and that carries. I hope that will help you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for your presentation. Our last delegate is the Ucluelet Chamber of Commerce Executive Director, Mr. Jenkins.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having us here today. And just excuse me in advance for my nerves. I'm not the best with public speaking, but so just to give a bit of a background to everything, in April of 2023, the Ucluelet Chamber of Commerce was approved for a provincial grant to employ a chamber manager for a 2-year period to rebuild and revitalize the Ucluelet Chamber of Commerce, specifically to work on building membership, engaging in Ucluelet and economic and area economic development activities. The Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program, the REDIP, is a grant launched by the Ministry of Jobs, Economic Development and Innovation. In June, I started work as the Chamber's Executive Director with a focus on the following areas: membership to increase enrollment, engagement and participation, in marketing to help expand communications, website and social media, with the Board of Directors to help improve leadership capacity, and events to participate and coordinate Van Isle 360, Edge to Edge Marathon, night markets, Yuki Days, and other community engaging events and activities. So in the beginning of July, in response to the extensive damages caused by the Highway 4 closures to our business communities and communities as a whole, the Chamber began working within a committee tasked with exploring these damages and ways to help with recovery from them. The committee was initially comprised of tourism departments, CIOs, including Mr. Lawrence, and other members of the districts and the chambers of each of Ucluelet, Tofino, and Port Alberni. It has been generally streamlined down to just the chambers from the three communities, with the continued partnership of the other departments as well as Alberta Clayoquot Community Futures. In this regional economic development project, which is called the Alberni Clayoquot Regional Economic Recovery and Resiliency Initiative, the project is funded by ICE-D and is planned to be completed by spring of 2024. The timeline's still being developed. The deliverables for this project will be a report that will utilize data and business sector research to help understand the economic and community impacts of the highway closures, and to provide recommendations for business continuity and recovery strategies. It will support a business case to properly maintain and/or develop a reliable and safe secondary road in and out of Port Alberni, and it will provide something concrete that can be used to approach various levels of government to potentially enact policy change, ultimately to help recognize the adverse effects of climate disasters and other significant interruptions in economic activity, and ways to support small rural tourism-based communities during such interruptions. We needed to reduce the scope of this original project due to funding and capacity limitations. Thus, due to the significant importance of these matters, we see an opportunity to adopt these reduced deliverables, if you may, into our extended work at the Ucluelet Chamber of Commerce. Which brings us to our next important project, which the Ucluelet Chamber of Commerce is 2024 to 2026 READ application, which will incorporate the results from the Alberta Clayoquot Regional Economic Recovery and Resiliency Initiative and use it as a starting point for developing a much more in-depth local economic development recovery strategy as it pertains to Ucluelet and our directly neighboring communities. This ongoing project will be called the Ucluelet Economic Readiness Strategy, a recovery and resiliency model for rural and remote communities. And the focus of our work will shift to a local perspective, to our sufficiency and our ability to sustain the businesses and workforce before, during, and after occurring natural disasters such as rock slides, earthquakes, tsunamis, and other increased and the increased prevalence of wildfires, washouts, major storms, and other climate change-driven disasters. Our economic interruptions, such as other economic interruptions such as pandemics, ferry pauses or strikes, major recessions, etc., will also be considered, as our usually strong tourism industry can be adversely affected by so many factors. The Ucluelet Chamber of Commerce will collaborate with stakeholders and rights holders to establish community-based response strategies to overcome economic challenges caused by the interruptions to the flow of goods and services to and from our communities. The goal of this 2-year project is to develop a functional system to collect and analyze data and to measure annual fluctuations that would help identify what is needed and put into place response strategies that realign the imbalances between supply and demand for local businesses and workforce. Our proposed scope of work would include focus on the 4 rural and remote communities located on the west coast of Vancouver Island, which includes the District of Ucluelet, the Ucluelet First Nation, Tokot First Nation, and the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District, which includes Area C all the way up to Long Beach. We would also look to hire a consultant to set up project frameworks and to hire and train and to help hire and train a project coordinator, and to assemble a working group of local businesses and workforce representatives from each community The sustainability factors will be determined and adjusted by the working group. To develop a functional transferable model or a living document that collects data through the local business licensing program, measures current data, monitors data fluctuations, and provides current fact-based information that supports and tests the effectiveness of applied alignment strategies and maintaining the balance between business and workforce supply and demand. And to utilize this information to assist the business community and the community as a whole in continually adapting resiliency strategies, and to help with Euclid's long-term sustainability in the uncertain years to come. The methodology that will be used for this, it would be to expand the current business license form to include data collection on local economic development criteria as determined by the working group, such as workforce, housing, and transportation needs, and other areas that are important to the data collection. This information will be collected on the business license form as businesses renew their licenses. The data collected would then be supplied to the Ucluelet Chamber of Commerce for further tracking and analysis. The project coordinator will provide administrative support for data collection, reporting, as well as secretarial services to the working group. So generally, the Ucluelet Chamber of Commerce is humbly requesting the following. Firstly, a letter of support for this proposed project titled the 2024 Ucluelet Economic Readiness Strategy, Recovery and Resiliency Model for Rural and Remote Communities, to propose, the purpose of this letter is to accompany our grant application to the Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program to fund this project. The application deadline for this is October 30th of 2023. And secondly, to renew and strengthen the partnership between the District of Ucluelet and the Ucluelet Chamber of Commerce, and to improve communication and collaboration on local economic development initiatives by the district appointing a delegate to attend the project working group meetings. And three, to have additional questions added to the district's business license applications as advised by the working group, and to have that project's specific information supplied to the working group with the frequency to be determined. And four, we request financial support in the amount of $35,000 for the 2-year project. This amount will serve as applicant equity for the REDIP grant, and to hire a third-party professional to set up the framework and to train the coordinator. So that's all that I got. So yeah, if you have any questions. I believe also Ursula Bank should be on Zoom. I don't know if she's on there, but if she is, then she can also help with some questions if I am unable. But
Maybe Janessa?
no, well, unless she's under.
No, Ursula.
It would be under Ursula.
Ursula
but
Bank.
She might not have been able to make it.
I don't
She
see
has
it.
had health issues, so that's fine. Yeah, no, I'll try to answer any questions. Yeah.
All right, we'll start with you then. Any questions for Mr. Jenkins? Councillor Anderson?
Yeah. Nice to meet you, Joshua.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah, I actually sat at the table with the Minister of Jobs and Economic Development and Innovation for that. And they gave me a handout here just on that. That was what I was actually talking about with that potential grant that we saw. It was for REDIP, and there was a few different here. And I was just talking to it was, sorry, what's her name? It was Wendy Coe, the MPA, Regional Manager of Operations.
For Jedi, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and so yeah, it seemed like there was some. We just went over our situation, and she said, yeah, if your population is under 2,500, there was like a criterion here, and it did seem like there was some availability for funds in here too. So,
Yeah.
I think that's what you're already talking about. It was called the Economic Capacity REDIP EC. I don't know if you've. That's
Yeah, there's a lot of things going around right now, and we're going to be working on trying to collect all of the different information and data that's out there and the different grants available and everything. That we'll be working on that with the present project we're working on, and also with the project that we're proposing that would be rolling off of this. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But
Excellent.
fortunately, right now it seems like there's a lot of things getting put in place for climate crisis interruptions for tourism, things like that. So that I think there's a lot of opportunity to be able to help form policy and help give information to the proper groups, and that's what we're hoping to be able to work closely with government agencies and stuff as well to
Right.
advocate for us and other small rural-based tourism based
Excellent.
towns. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. So I'll share this with you as well. I think
Yeah,
I've
thank
got
you.
your
Yeah.
contact here.
Thank
so
you. Yeah, thanks.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I think the whole province realized that what a situation we were in when our Highway 4 was shut down for 18 days, and that impacted not just us in Tofino, but Port Alberni as well. So, yeah, it's great that they're coming up with some programs to help with things like that.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Jenkins? So for your first ask, I'm pretty sure we can provide a letter of support. So I would move that we provide a letter of support for the Ucluelet Chamber of Commerce for their project 2024 Ucluelet Economic Readiness Strategy Recovery and Resilience Model for Rural and Remote Communities. It's hard to say that in one breath. And that's for the Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program. Could I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Mafty. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, and that carries. Now for the next three requests, part of this is a funding request, so that's going to have to be referred to the 2024 budget,
Yep.
because there's no money in this year's budget for that.
Yeah.
So I will move that council refer the second, third, and fourth issues of this request to staff for a report on the Chamber's request for funding and renewed partnership with the district. And then the third one that wasn't actually in our package was the business license change.
Yeah, sorry, I made some
Yeah, the
adjustments
business
on my
license
presentation, yeah.
application wording change, I guess we'll
Yeah.
call it. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Anderson. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, and that carries.
I can
So-
forward you this as well.
Yeah, that would be helpful, sure. But thank you for presenting today. And we didn't come up with too many hard questions for you, so that was good.
That's great, thanks. And thank you for your time, and looking forward to working with the district more closely in the future.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
Unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business? No, seeing none, we have three report items. 7.1 is the first item, CEPF Fire Department Equipment Grant Application. And this item will be presented by our fire chief, Mr. Geddes.
Through the mayor. Good afternoon. This is basically a simple report seeking council's support in our grant application to the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund, which is a funding stream through UBCM that comes out from time to time. And what we're looking at is purchasing 8 extra sets of firefighter tune-out gear at a price in there at $2,600 and change per set. This would be a a huge help in our cancer prevention program that I started with our fire department when I came to town here in 2019. It's highly recommended that firefighters have 2 sets of gear, especially in circumstances such as us, where we only have 1 washing machine at the fire hall, and it takes literally days after an event to wash everybody's gear, make sure it's clean and dry to get everybody back in service. So we're really rolling the dice sometimes, not having enough gear. It's very rare that happens, but it does happen. So, and we're not unique in that sense. So basically, I'm just looking for council support in this grant application to UBCM that would see us purchase some more gear and work towards getting 2 sets for each firefighter. I'd gladly take any questions.
Thank you, Chief. So that would be 8 sets of gear totaling $28,964.08.
Yes.
Perfect. Questions? Councillor Mafty?
Through the mayor, this is just for my own clarity. In the package presented to us by the district, there's an option, and under the cons it says, quote, there will be times if this grant is not approved or if 2 sets of turnout gear are not available, there will continue to be times where fire department response may be delayed and or not possible due to the backlog of contaminated personal protective equipment after an incident. So does it mean that currently there have been situations where fire response has been delayed and or not possible because firefighters have not had gear to put on?
Through the mayor, that's that wasn't intended as a threat or anything. It's just yes. To be there hasn't been a significant delay in a call, but there is potential for that certainly. And when we do have a big event, when there's a lineup literally for our washing machine, we do keep a certain amount of old gear on stock for that for those instances. But yes, there is potential for that for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Pennington?
Through the mayor. So if you're not successful in this grant, this gear doesn't happen. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, that's correct, but we'll keep working towards that in our operational budget every year. It used to be in our capital. It was since moved into our operational budget that we budget to purchase 3 new sets of gear per year. And what I've been doing is, because turnout gear has a 10-year lifespan on it for insurance purposes and wear and tear and technology, just as our apparatus do, it has to be replaced at 10 years. For interior firefighting. And what I've been doing is trying to speed up that process. So as gear is getting to 7-8 years, if it's still serviceable and it's in the budget, then trying to get ahead of the game. So some of our members already do have 2 sets of gear. Yeah, this would just speed up that process that we're working towards.
So if you're not successful in obtaining the grant, would you come forward to us again for financing for that? Or would that be through the budget process?
Through the mayor, just through our operational budget, which is already built in there to purchase some gear. Yeah, so there wouldn't be another ask that we need this 8 sets of gear in the budget. There wouldn't be an initial ask. This is a bonus if you look at it that way.
Right.
Yes, grants are always a bonus.
I just want to make sure that our firefighters have the gear they need. If it's for their own health and safety and the health and safety of our community, $30,000 doesn't sound unreasonable for us to obtain. So it's just sort of me saying, if you need support for that initiative, however it can come to us, bring it.
Through the mayor, thank you.
Any other questions? There are 2 recommendations, and I believe they should be moved individually.
I'll move that council approve the 2023 grant application for the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund Volunteer and Composite Fire Department's Equipment and Training Grant.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Anderson? Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries.
Thank you.
I'll further move that council provides overall management for the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund Volunteer and Composite Fire Department's Equipment and Training Grant.
And do I have a seconder?
Second it.
Councillor Anderson, any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries. Excellent. Good
Thank you
luck
very
with
much.
your grant. Next item is 7.2, Fire and Emergency Services 2023, Quarter 1 to Quarter 2. This item was moved from 10.1 on the agenda when Council amended the agenda. This report will also be presented by the Fire Chief.
Through the mayor, thank you. It's a pleasure to report on the first half of 2023. The fire department and emergency services in general, what has been going on in our world. So first of all, it starts with a breakdown of our calls. As you can see, there was a slight increase in overall call volume in the first 6 months of the year. And throughout the summer, we're actually farther ahead. Last year was our busiest year on record, and we're slightly ahead of that, even with the road closure, which really was a slow time as far as road rescue calls for us, which typically the summer is a very busy time for road rescue, and it wasn't mainly, most likely due to the highway closure and the decrease in tourists on the road. So there's a call breakdown. So 14 alarm activations, 3 ambulance assists, 3 beach brush fires, 1 chimney fire, 6 duty officer investigations, and oftentimes burning complaints will come in as a duty officer investigation. So that's it could be a number of things, a duty investigation, but typically a burning complaint will come in as labeled as such. Hydro trouble 8 calls, 1 marine incident, and that was a boat fire. They're labeled either fire dispatches terms that they use, and just for consistency, I've carried on with them. Medical calls 22. Motor vehicle fires 1, motor vehicle incidents 16, propane gas leaks 2, structure fires 2, and 2 random other calls that don't fit in any of those other categories. So 21 calls in the contracted areas. So that includes the motor vehicle incidents on the highway that we've responded to, of course, so, and areas that we have service agreements for. Emergency management, there were no emergency operations center activations throughout the period, which is a good thing, and pretty rare for the summer we had throughout the province. Continue to have an utility emergency planning committee quarterly meetings. So we had one in January and April. Next one's coming up third quarter, which is next week. In training, I've been very busy in training with fire and emergency services in general. So over 1,100 person hours just in the fire department in the first 6 months of the year. Includes 3 recruit firefighters began the NFPA 1001 firefighter certification program. And that's the North American standard for firefighter training, and we're lucky we do the training in-house, and I'm a certified evaluator, so I do the evaluations in-house as well, often on Tuesday nights. That's what we're doing, is the certification program. 1 firefighter completed NFPA 1021 fire officer level 1, which is a pretty good, a really good benchmark to get to, and I'm striving to get all our officers to that level. 4 firefighters attended Live Fire 1 certification in Comox. 3 firefighters attended air brake certification training in Arrington, and those 3 firefighters actually just last weekend we were out at the airport doing some driver training with them. We're lucky that the relation we have with the airport, and there's a room out there where we can often do utilize unused space. So it's great to have a nice big paved unutilized area where we can do driver training. 5 firefighters attended wildland firefighter training hosted by Parks Canada, and that is going to be an annual thing that I've negotiated with Parks Canada, and still as we work towards finalizing the service agreement with Parks Canada, that's in there, and they've agreed in concept to providing training, wildfire training annually to our department as well as to Fino. 1 firefighter completed NFPA 1521 incident safety officer certification. Another one enrolled in the fire officer program. And then now all of our members are certified at the NFPA 1001 Live Fire 2 level, other than our recruits. So that's the benchmark certification for an interior firefighter that certifies you to actually go inside a burning building. So we're making great progress in our training. Also, one of the things we've started recently, the last few years, is regular practices with our partners in Tofino, building those relationships, and knowing the resources that each town has and the limitations as well. So we help them out with their shortage of water this year, coming up with a bit of a plan as to how we would attack that, for lack of a better word, if they did have a structure fire in the midst of that, the drought that they just went through. So we are working closely with Tofino on areas such as that. On emergency management, in February, we hosted an EOC Essentials course in town here that I applied for a grant and was successful in that one. And so we had 22 of our local volunteers and employees that took part at the certification course through the Justice Institute at the Fire Hall. So that was a really good time. And then later on in May, we were actually hosted a huge joint emergency operations center mock activation utilizing EOCs from Tofino, the ACRD, and the District of Tofino as well. So we held that at the Fire Hall and the UAC Hall. So that was a really good day of training. Also had all of our area First Nations partners taking part at different levels. So it was really good to have them involved. We had members of Toquat and Ukulthad in our EOC just basically shadowing to see as they're we're really trying to help them reestablish and gain some traction with their emergency management programs, and they're doing great things, both of those nations. Fire prevention, so 32 fire safety inspections were completed during the period, which is down slightly from 34 in the previous year. Now, as you know, we have a full-time fire prevention officer who is, in the new year, the goal is to get him doing more proactive fire inspections and really see that number coming up is the goal, and we're getting there. That'll also allow us to be compliant with pre-fire planning for any complex buildings that we're required to do as a municipality. And that area of my department needs improvement, and so having Deputy Chief McCurry, I'm mentoring him now as we speak, and then with the goal in the new year that he'll be mostly independent and be taking on those challenges. Some general information about our membership. I held a very successful community barbecue at Big Beach in May. It was a fundraiser for the Firefighters Association to replenish their benevolent fund, which is a fund that they established and strive to keep $5,000 on account for any. It's a little bit broad, the scope of that, what it's for, but it's voted on by the member. So if a member is having some hardship and needs some financial help, whether it's counseling or medical assistance with bills, and then the membership can vote to provide up to $5,000 to that member. And we actually utilize it for a retired member this year, so it was nice to be able to support the retired member, and also nice to be able to replenish those funds. 2023 recruits have been assigned to their respective duty crews, and they're going great guns. They are just like last year's bunch. They are now our keeners and showing up to every call, which is great. I'm putting on a first responder course for them to get them all certified to the first responder level starting in a few weeks, so in October. Continuing upgrading our service agreements with the ACRD. That's been a really slow process since I got here. They've had some turnover in staff, and so we're still working towards that, and Parks Canada as well. With fire season behind us now mostly, hopefully we can get back to the table on both those agreements and help get them solidified. We hosted a high ground hike during Tsunami Preparedness Week. It was attended by Honorable Bowen Ma, which was a really nice treat to have her here, and so I was able to show her what we're doing, our level of preparation. She took part in the high ground hike from Big Beach up to the school with us. It was a day similar to today. It was a pretty blustery day, but it was a good day. University of Ottawa was also in town doing part of an experiment in that they're tracking data on evacuations, and I haven't seen the results of that study yet. Canadian Cross was also in town helping out with that, and we're nearing the end of our relationship for that grant with Canadian Red Cross that has helped bolster our emergency management preparedness in town. Recently, the provincial government, specifically Emergency Medical Assistance Licensing Board, amended legislation allowing first responders greater capacity and ability for diagnostic and treatment capabilities on their licenses. So this winter, we're going to be training all of our first responders, upgrading them to be able to do a lot of his diagnostic, but there are some treatments as well. And this will only benefit the patients. Things like blood pressure, blood glucose levels, epinephrine administration intramuscularly, and I'll be able to do all those in-house as well as an instructor, which is great. And we'll be able to incorporate that on those nice rainy Tuesday nights rather than loading hose out in the rain. And then lastly, just a happy statement that we're continuing to attract quality members who are committed to the community and guided by the fire department's values. And these are values that are members decided on a couple of years ago on a Tuesday night when we didn't really have a mission statement or vision or values. So just to reiterate our values of safety, respect, reliability, compassion, competence, and resilience. And that's it for my official report. And just a couple of afterthoughts, hot off the press, is that the fire ban will be lifted as of noon tomorrow. So our communications person will be getting messaging out. I've already put it on the fire department social media. Just got an email from the province literally about a couple hours before the meeting. So today, so that will be lifted as of noon tomorrow. And the fire department's hosting an open house on October 22nd. It's a week after Fire Prevention Week, but that date worked best for our membership. So more information to come, but that'll be an open house at the fire hall, opportunity for people to come and see what we do and meet some of the firefighters. And I will gladly answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the Chief? Councillor Hoare?
I noted. I feel like a seal. So there were 21 calls in contracted areas. I'm wondering how many of those were like the highway calls, like not including, I mean, I guess so that's ACRD, but I'm just wondering how many times you guys get called out to the highway motor vehicle calls.
Through the mayor, it varies, of course, and it was actually down, that number. I can get exact numbers if you like. I'll gladly look that up. But there was a real period from July to end of August where we hadn't done many, if any, road rescue calls, which is really rare for that time of year. So, like you say, typically it's quite a bit higher than what it has been this year.
Maybe what I'm curious about is that in comparison to last year then, if you have that data easily available.
I can certainly extract that for you, I feel like, yeah.
No rush on it, just curiosity. I'm a bit of a cat that way.
Other questions?
More of a
Councillor Anderson?
just through the mayor, I was going to say those events like in May, the barbecue, those are always great. We have a good time at those, and they always have a great turnout. And it's more of a thank you for everything that you guys do. It's a great team. And I actually even went to the firefighters at the trade show at the UBC. There was a firefighters booth there, and Ken Mount, fire chief for Saanich, says to say hi. Yeah.
Through the mayor, yes. Ken, Chief Mount and I were on Tour de Rock team last year and become really good friends. So yeah.
Well, that's what he said.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you.
I stopped by the same booth and he told me the same thing. He said to say hi. Councillor Mafty, are you poised for a question here?
Nope.
Okay.
Not always, but
Great. Well, thank you for all that you do, and thank you for this report. It's really, really great information.
Thanks, my pleasure.
The final report item is 7.3, BC Housing Community Housing Fund Grant, and this report will be presented by the Director of Community Planning, Mr. Gregg. Welcome.
There we go. Thank you. Through the mayor, this is for 1300 Peninsula Road is the address of this development or potential development. As council will recall, a little bit of background that this was a 5-unit affordable housing development, supportive housing development that we went for a federal government, through the CMHC, a Rapid Housing Initiative 3 grant. We had what we were told was a good application, but it was just a very oversubscribed grant, and we were not successful in that this spring. Council had earmarked, you'll recall, $225,000 from the Affordable Housing Reserve in total, and potentially using the land, district-owned property for the project. And that initial funding was for developing the design, the engineering, surveying, legal work, all the rest of it to get the project going. And then we continued that through the spring, hoping to get the Rapid Housing Grant. So we're looking now at Plan B, which is a new opportunity that's opened up through the province, through BC Housing, for what's called the Community Housing Fund. And this would, again, be partnering with the West Coast Community Resource Society on the application. And I'll just briefly sort of speak about how this new opportunity is a little different in the funding, because, of course, the province has some slightly different parameters around what they're looking for in this grant. But really, the project physically would be the same 5 units. It's a mix of basically ground-oriented housing to be rental housing, And it's, as I said, slightly different financing from the province, but really the same housing stock to be created on the district land. And so those 5 units through this the community housing fund, they are prescribing a range of rents. 1 would be what they're termed the deep subsidy, 3 would be rent geared to income, and 1 would be a market rental unit. And that the BC Housing this grant program, there's 2 parts to the funding. We've sort of, I'm not an expert in all the financing of this stuff, but essentially 2 parts are, 1 is a capital grant of a very specific $158,294 per unit, which is just grant money to build the units. And then that doesn't cover the full cost of construction. The balance would be BC Housing would provide essentially a mortgage to the society for financing the rest of the capital cost, and then an operating subsidy for the length of the mortgage to pay the mortgage, which is, I guess, another way of financing the thing. But essentially, the whole cost of constructing the building would be covered by BC Housing, that the society would own the building, and that the rents, which are low, would cover operations and maintenance of the building. So there's no capital fundraising necessary to construct the building, or additional capital being requested of the district over what's already being budgeted. So in a nutshell, the district would provide the land, and that existing, we have that affordable housing dollars that are already in the budget, which we've used for designing the project. And we're under budget on that. We think we'll have a little left over to contribute to the construction as well. And really that would be the construction, the contribution from the municipality. There's no additional property taxes or no additional, request that's being made at this time. So as part of this, the district would lease the land to the society for the term is 60 years. And that's partly laid out in the BC Housing, the grant application. They're looking for a long-term commitment. So for a nominal fee, like $1 a year. And the buildings then would be, constructed, again, no capital cost to the society. Then the society would operate the housing for, on behalf of their clients. And really meet a deep housing need in the district. So essentially, we have a shovel-ready project now, which is kind of amazing, because it's always the struggle is to get to truly a shovel-ready project. And we think we have a really strong application for the community housing fund. And really, we're looking for an indication from council if we're on the right track. There's some motions there that would be very helpful in starting to prepare the grant and get the thing together. The grant application, the timing of this, it's due November 17th. So there's a council meeting on November, I believe it's the 7th, when this would come with, here's the application and the details, including potentially, with the lease with the society who we've been in discussions with. And really, first, I just see if there are any questions, and I notice we have some members of the society here with Margaret and Jill, and not sure if Laurie could make it, but are there any questions?
Thank you. Questions?
Through the mayor, I'm just curious about the market rent component. Is that just to make it viable from their standpoint?
That's how BC Housing is sort of going at it. So there's a blend of that there be some variety within that, and so that there's enough. The intent is that the rents that are generated there, because the deep subsidy is like the terms, and maybe Jill can help me out here. It would be a rent that's like really nominal, rent geared to income, again depending. But I think the market rent is intended to ensure that there's a balance there and enough funding to cover the maintenance and the operation of the building. It would still be a rental unit for adding to the housing stock as part of this. But those parameters, and it's I've broken it down into the numbers. I think it's 1, 3, and 1 unit, but really they have a percentage. If you were doing 100 units, it would be 20% of deep subsidy and 50% rent geared to income and whatnot. But it really, with these, we only have 5 units, so the small numbers, I think it's 1 market rental unit is one piece of it.
Right. Thank you.
And this is the property adjacent to the elementary school, correct?
Exactly. So it one of the things that, as council will recall, it really suits itself to, particularly in that being ground-oriented sort of townhouse. If you had, say, a single parent with kids, there's a playground next door. The elementary school, the high school are right next door. So it's a great location for housing.
And Macola would be the management company and would screen the people, the renters that are applying.
So, no, not necessarily. The Macola Development Services are assisting with the preparation of the grant, and they're very attuned to what are the needs of BC Housing, and both also with the operational agreement. That so, again, it would really be clients of the West Coast Community Resources Society would be sort of streamed into the housing. Now, whether there are within the society's operations, they can sort of speak to how they would manage, and I think some of those details there would be to be developed as well of the day-to-day operations, and if there are assistance. In this case, Macola is assisting. The district has helped with the RHI grant, and we're using them to assist with the Community Housing Fund grant as well, because there's a lot of pieces to pull together and to make sure we're checking all the boxes that the province needs to see.
I understand. That's great. Any other questions? Councillor Mafty?
Through the mayor, is there? I'm just trying to wrap my head around this one. I don't think that there's ever going to be a situation where there's going to be vacant housing, but just from like a curiosity, ethical point of view, if there are 5 units and they're being rented for different amounts, I understand how people would qualify for the various levels of subsidy. Is there anything to differentiate that market unit that would make it attractive and or logical for someone to say, okay, I'm going to pay twice as much, 3 times as much for like the same unit? Like, I'm just trying to understand how that works.
So through the mayor, essentially it would be clients of the society would have sort of the ability, and so it really is the intent of that spectrum. I think is based on need. If someone needs the deep subsidy or needs the rent-based income, but there may be a client who doesn't financially need the housing but may need it for other reasons. If there were, say, it was vacant, okay, there isn't demand for it. That then gets into the details of the lease agreement between the district and the society, which we haven't written yet because we'll see if council supports us moving forward on this. But could that be used for employee housing? The society has employees, the district has employees. We could set up a tier of, if it's not filled, let's fill it, let's use it, and then what are the qualifications, and who would sort of like be in line for that housing.
But the rent for that one is pinned to a market value.
Is to what is the market rent exactly? That's how BC Housing is sort of seen. So to some extent, that rent covers or keeps the rent at a level that would be what the market will bear in Ucluelet, but is offsetting some of the lower rents for the other units.
For sure. And then in terms of how the construction and finishing is done, it's not going to be like fancier than the others. It's going to be the same.
Through the mayor, no. As you can see, the drawing package is pretty detailed. BC Housing has a very thick book on standards, sort of minimum standards, and I'd say we're exceeding that. And so again, no, it's not like there's going to be the shiny primo unit and then really cheap ones. They're all going to be pretty good quality housing.
Gold toilets for everyone. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Seeing none, there are a number of recommendations, and I believe they should be moved separately.
Oh, I'd love to do it. My throat is so sore. But I'll up on this.
Councillor Anderson?
I would move that council direct staff to prepare a draft submission to the BC Housing Community Housing Fund grant intake for council authorization at its November 10th, 2023 regular meeting.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries.
I will further move that council direct staff to develop an agreement with the West Coast Community Resource Society to lease and develop 5 units of mixed market and affordable rental housing on the district-owned property at 1300 Peninsula Road, subject to successful funding through the Community Housing Fund proposal call.
Second.
Councillor Kennington seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries.
I further move that council direct staff to give notice of intent to lease the property at 1300 Peninsula Road to the West Coast Community Resources Society at a nominal fee for a period of 60 years for the purpose of developing and managing 5 units of mixed market and affordable community rental housing.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Mafty, further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, that carries.
And finally, I will move that council request letters of support from Ahousaht, Hashkwit, Tloquit, Toquat, and Uklathot Nations, MP Johns, MLA Osborne, and the District of Tofino.
Second.
Councillor Kennington seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, and that carries.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report. And good luck with the grant.
Thanks.
Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, we have one correspondence item. Would council like to bring it forward for discussion? Seeing no, we will move on. We have 4 information items. Actually, it looks like we have 5 in. Oh no, we moved 10.1 up. That's right. So we have 4. So the first one is Council Strategic Priorities Update, and that will be presented by our CAO, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is just bringing back for Council the updated report on what we've been up to with respect to Council's strategic priorities. The attachment included within the report provides the current status of where we are with respect to the initiatives as identified by Council during their strategic priority. If Council has any questions related to those, or if there's other priorities, as always, there's an opportunity for Council to advise staff to rearrange the priorities or add new priorities. I just ask that you give me a few moments to figure out where it belongs and what the impacts would be before we make those adjustments. If there's any questions, be happy to answer them.
Questions from Council?
I have one.
Councillor Hoare?
For Councillor Anderson, how's the kelp farming information gathering going?
It is moving. So I guess right now we're speaking to the company regarding kelp farming, so Cascadia. So we collected that information, and then there was an email that went to their team, their executive team, and the director. And then the kind of ball is sort of in their court, I think, at this point. I know that they interface with different ministries for things, but I'm not sure. I haven't heard back yet, so I don't know if this was like something like I found, and they hadn't found it yet, and they're like, oh, we didn't see this one. So that would be the ultimate goal, is that we have that biomanufacturing grant, and then see where it goes from there. But yeah.
Thanks. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's all right. But I will get back as soon as I find out what's going on with those guys, and then we'll be able to talk more about that and see what's happening with the ministry for sure.
I believe they have several farms in Barkley Sound. They were a delegation to us back in 2020, but we might be able to provide a spot for them to process it. Is maybe where we can help.
Right. That was the potential goal. There is the biodegradation that happens to the kelp, and if they have to do the initial processing further away in a place like Prince Rupert, or they take it by truck to somewhere like Port Alberni, it does start to break down. And I guess the quality of the kelp, if it's used as a biostimulant, which is like essentially like a fertilizer, it's not as good at that point. So it would be nice to do that. Yeah, if we can bring kelp to town, that's the goal.
Keep the conversation going.
Yes.
Any other questions or remarks for Mr. Lawrence? No? Okay, thank you for providing that report. 10.3 is the resolution tracker, and that is going to be given to us by Mr. Rotenberg, our Manager of Corporate Services.
So we've been doing our best to get the resolution tracker to you guys quarterly at this point. You notice that we put resolutions on there if there's a council resolution and there's an action directly connected to it. So for example, resolution to adopt the agenda is not on there, but a resolution directing myself to provide a letter of support is. When the item is shown as complete once, we remove it. When it is shown as no further actions, it gets removed as well. So it gets shown once, and then it's left there on the or it's in the archived version. And there are a series of resolutions on there, and I'll do my best to answer any questions you may have on that report.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Rotenberg? I'm glad some of those really old ones have been removed, because I got tired about asking about them.
I've got a question.
Councillor Hoare?
I think it's page 104. It's the one about garbage collection and WildSafe. And I know that I've seen quite a few things on social media about the bears getting into people's garbage or garbage cans stored outside. So I just wondered if we had anything, or if we maybe can encourage WildSafe to come talk to us about how the new organics recycling is going, because I do think it's a bit of an issue.
I've also seen lots of emails from people opposing the hour earlier put out in the mornings. And I believe the ACRD is doing that because that truck needs time to get to the landfill by 4 o'clock when their employees go home. And so the residents I've heard from are saying, well, why do we all have to put our garbage out an hour earlier? Why doesn't the landfill just stay open an hour earlier? So I don't know if we can talk to the ACRD about that, but I've seen numerous emails. I get copied on the funniest emails, but this one actually isn't funny. It's actually a good point. Don't know where I'm going with that, but
Is that a conversation at the ACRD board, maybe?
yes. I have a meeting, an ACRD meeting tomorrow, so I will bring that up.
If I could just chime in super briefly, I know I brought this up when we were at UBCM, but I had a chance to meet with a woman named Leslie Fox, who is with an association called the Fur Bearers, and they are willing to pay for any kind of promotional outreach, educational material that may be of use in preventing or reducing human-wildlife conflict. So if there's any kind of mailer, handout, door hanger, anything like that that we would want to distribute at scale, they're willing to work with us to produce our content, or we can adapt their content. They'll brand it with our logo. They'll pay for the material as long as we can pay for the distribution. I just had her card right in my book here. How timely.
That would be maybe someone to put in touch with Bob Hansen.
Yes.
And Bob Hansen has done door hanger information things in the past. So that might, if it's time to do that again, then maybe that company can provide some support. Anything else on the resolution tracker? No? Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Rotenberg. There are 2 additional information items. 10.4, Decolonize First, New Chalmouth Community Working Circles, co-hosted by Literacy Alberni and the Alberni Clayoquot Health Network. I'm hoping some of you would be interested in attending this. Ooh. Councillor Anderson? It's, I think there's 2 different sessions that, and you can pick between them. Tuesday afternoon starting October 3rd to October 24th. That probably rules out Councillor Hoare. Any other councillors interested in attending?
I can't make it.
No.
Interested but cannot.
Can't. I would be interested in attending. So I will move that council authorize councillors Anderson and myself to represent the district of Ucluelet at the Decolonize First New Chalmouth Community Learning Circles and direct staff to arrange for registration. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Mafty, any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, and that carries. Go forth and learn. Thank you. And 10.5 is the Municipal Protected Areas Project webinar. This one is at 10 a.m. on October 4th, and I have a West Coast Committee meeting at that exact time on that exact day, so I definitely can't attend that. Hoping someone is available.
I would be super keen, and I wanted to speak up in support. I know Stuart, and I know the work that BC Nature does, and they're super legit, and I think this would actually be relevant and of interest. On October 4th, I'm actually doing bird surveys supported by BC Nature, so I can't do it because I'm out on the water. But if anyone else can go, Stuart told me about this program, and I think it could be something quite useful for us to learn more about, especially because they can do most of the work. If no one can go, I'm trying to go to another event that BC Nature has in Victoria later in the month, and I can probably get more information then. But if anyone can attend the webinar, it's probably going to be very streamlined. But yeah, if there's anything that we want to invest in protecting at the municipal level, they can pretty much do all of the legwork for us.
Wow.
I wish. It's my biggest order day.
Wednesday. That's a Wednesday. Councillor Anderson. And there's also an opportunity for staff, I believe, Mr. Lawrence, to attend this. So you're pretty sure you can? Yeah. All right. I will move that council authorize Councillor Anderson to represent the district of Ucluelet at the Municipal Projected Areas Project webinar. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Mafty. Further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries. It's funny, I thought of you right away when I saw this.
He already told me about it, and I was like, I can't. I'm surveying that whole week. But yeah, it's interesting. They're making a huge push to basically get the word out and try to do more. Yeah, he's a good guy, and he's got a great team. So
awesome, that's great. I look forward to hearing how that goes. Council committee reports. Councillor Anderson.
All right. Well, it was the it was the UBCM, as we all know. So I don't know. I said to you before that I don't think there's any way I could break this all down in a short amount of time. So I'll just do a quick summary. Well, first of all, it was great. That was my first one, and it was excellent to go and rub shoulders with all the other municipality leaders, and it was one of the things I've noticed right away is that there's quite a few people in the same boat, and we're all going through the same thing, and people were unbelievably kind and nice, and they could see, people could tell it was my first time going to these things. I was just kind of walking around with my, kind of bewildered, but I had some really great experiences talking to people that are going through. Some people are going through the same thing that we're going through with affordable housing and things like that. But so that was really neat to network and have some people kind of give some advice and offer, you know, their they'd give you your business card and say, hey, if you want to talk about this. And one a good example of that would be the fellow from Courtney that we sat next to at one of the dinners, and he had said that they have a physician retention program, basically to sort of help keep their doctors there, especially when they're going through a medical center change or something like that. So they have a whole program that they came up with there in conjunction with Comox. So I'm going to reach out to him and find out what that's all about. Of all the things that I went to, probably the BC Nonprofit Housing Association one was one of the, and the BC Housing, both of those were really cool sessions. And just learning a ton of information that I didn't realize that that's how things worked, and they're so open to help, and you can call them anytime to sort of understand how some of these things can get off the ground, and what it means to have the nonprofit come in and help out with these things, and they can contact developers on your behalf, and whatever's out there, they can help navigate that. So that was kind of nice to have that. There was obviously the Ministry of Jobs, Economic Development, and Innovation stuff with Cascadia and the Kelp. I already talked a bit about that, so we'll see what happens down the road with that one. And just a few little things here and there. I talked to someone that was coming out to take a look at maybe helping us with putting in those pedestrian crosswalk, like flashing signals, because there was some chatter around town, and people had spoken up about some close calls on a couple of the pedestrian ones. I know we talked about this briefly. So those are sort of the ones that just jump out. There's a million other things, but I'm not going to talk forever. So thanks.
Thank you. Any other meetings beside UBCM since our last council meeting?
I had an ACHN meeting, but I had to miss it because I was in the UBCM. So and I'm still looking at the minutes for that. So that was it for me, I think.
Great, thank you. Councillor Hoare.
I would say I want to keep it brief, but there's been a lot of stuff. I attended a Wild Pacific Trail Society meeting on September 6th. Heads up, their AGM is October 22nd from 1:30 to 4:30, and everybody is welcome. And usually there's snacks, and I've heard a rumor that Heartwood might be involved with the snacks. So come on out and learn what the society's been doing. I want to give a shout out to Josh, their education guy. He has been working really hard all summer, doing amazing stuff, and he is leaving on October 1st. And I was hoping we'd have a delegation today, but it was not to be. So big shout out to Josh for all the hard work he's done.
Did you say October 22nd?
October 22nd, yeah.
Do you have a time?
1:30 to 4:30-ish, I think. Watch for signs. They're also planning to do a grand opening for the newest one of the Crow's Nest parts of the trail. And usually they do that first and then come in and have the meeting. So there may be a ceremony or something happening at 1 on the trail at 1:30 here. But watch for notice in the Westerly. I also attended on September 16th the Regional Library Board meeting. And we got through a lot of budget stuff. There were a lot of numbers. Just gonna say that. I've mentioned the Masset Library Project because their library is leaky. It's like a 100-year-old log building up there. They have the property transferred, and that project is ongoing, and they're working with their language peeps. So there's actually going to be a language lab in it for the Haida people. And they're working, both Masset and Old Masset Council are working together on it. It's really cool. Some stuff has come up about libraries being cooling centers when we have heat problems. I don't know that ours would work here, but there was some interesting information about them doing that in Nanaimo. And then UBCM, and I am totally running out of voice, so I'm just gonna I love quotes, so I've got quotes. So I want to comment that one of the coolest sessions I was at was about the path to reconciliation and the implementing UNDRIP. And one of the members of the Comox Nation was speaking, and she said that their position was to diplomatically ruffle feathers. And I thought that that was a brilliant way to describe it, because they do. That is something that the First Nations do, and I think it's important because they make you think. And the thing you need to think about is who isn't in the room. And that also came up at another session I had on inclusivity, was look around the room and who isn't here. Because those are the people that we need to make sure get invites to be here, to sit at tables and to speak their parts and speak their truths for us to listen. So there were lots of other great quotes, and maybe they'll come up later, but I'm running out.
Yes, the keynote speaker had one that I watched you write down. Okay, thank you, Councillor Hart. Councillor Cunnington.
Of course, I attended UBCM as well.
And you have a sore throat too.
I did, and now it's coming back. It was interesting because I wanted to diversify. You know, I'm all about the housing, so I signed up for all the housing forums and panels and whatnot. And I decided to go to the decriminalization and public use panel, and Dr. Bonnie Henry was there, and it was a very interesting talk. And it was in the way they did it is they had sort of the pro side come in and talk about it, and then they had a panel of local government officials talking about how that's all great, but there's no money for it. But then again, it all came back to housing, so it didn't matter where I went. Housing became sort of the underlying issue, from accessibility to mental health issues, and some of the struggles that you see in the larger cities, and hearing them talk. It's not visible here. I'm sure it's here. But it's a growing crisis, and at some point we're going to have to really address it in the public eye, because not a lot of people are aware of it. So the challenge is funding. The funding is just not there. So, you know, if it's coming, we need to prepare for it. When we talk about supportive housing, and you know, a lot of people are saying, "Oh, that attracts this," and maybe it doesn't attract more, but it makes it more in the public, and people are more aware of it, and it scares them. So we need to look at public education in that regard. And then all the other housing forms basically came down to this: we need more housing, all kinds of housing, which is why I posed the question to Bruce earlier about the market housing. With that was to bring to light that it's not just below market housing, affordable housing, it's all housing that we need to tackle. And some of the underlying themes were, and the challenges of creating housing were NIMBYism, permit times, infrastructure, and zoning. So there was a talk of pre-zoning areas, like getting ready, paving the way for this development, because we wait until there's an application in place, and then we have to go through the rezoning process. So basically a roadmap and certainty. So, you know, some of the councillors that were there were talking about, we don't need incentives, we need certainty. So that was one of the themes. So I'm just going to leave it at that, because I've got like 5 pages of notes on housing, but I've talked to all of you at the dinner about it, and we'll continue to talk about it every time it comes up. So we're bringing these tidbits up as we move along.
And I see you brought your favorite piece of swag from the conference.
I did. I brought this for James. But he's not here. So I'm just going to put this in here, and I'll bring it back.
And your dog thought it said, "I love pawing."
Yes. Yeah, my dog thought it said I love pawing, but no, it's paving.
It's paving. Okay, great. Thank you. Councillor Mafty.
I, too, attended the UBCM conference. I thought that it was really interesting. It was, for me, the way that I approached it and the way that I've been reflecting on it was I tend to look at big picture stuff and look at everything from 30,000 feet. And it was really interesting to see what Ucluelet has in common with, most of the other municipalities in the province. There were lots of issues that you seem to hear from everyone in the forums or just, in casual conversation that immediately seemed very familiar. And then there were lots of issues that I whether we're lucky or they just don't apply to us. I was like, oh, okay, all right. This is not on our radar. And it's obviously the ones that we share with other municipalities that I think it's instructive and possibly beneficial to learn how other people have solved those problems or how they're dealing with them. I attended, I think, all of the same housing stuff that Councillor Kenning did and the decriminalization one as well. The housing stuff really stuck with me because I feel that that's our issue. And I had a couple productive chats at the trade show there with Marika at the BC Nonprofit Housing Association. I think that's a really good contact and connection. And I don't think it's the first time that district staff or this council has been aware of that resource. But it does strike me that sometimes if we have, a small piece of land or a potential product, a product to pitch, like for example the 5 units of supportive housing, one of the things that they do quite well, at least to hear her hype it up, is work on small projects. And that was one of the things that I know Councillor Kennington found disappointing, and I echo that, is that a lot of the provincial level stuff, they're interested in like 1,000 units or 10,000, like the kind of stuff that grabs headlines, not like, well, we put 5 units in on Peninsula Road. And so working with a partner that understands that is connected with developers that understand that, I think that can solve some of the problems that we might face that just have to do with scale. The other thing, this has kind of become my hobby horse, is we talk about housing and we need housing. Well, we have a lot of housing, and a lot of it is just not being used or not being used to house the people that live here. And talking with other councillors that have much more acute issues of housing availability, it struck me that there's perhaps more that we could do as a municipality to incentivize. I know you just said we don't need it to incentivize.
Oh, the counselor,
No, I know, but if we can incentivize landlords to offer up properties as long-term rentals, if we can further de-incentivize, use for short-term rental beyond the core capacity that we need to satisfy a robust tourism sector. It's really disappointing to hear from other municipalities that are struggling with the same issues of, there's just no available housing for the people in the community, but then there are, dozens, hundreds, thousands of housing units that are only occupied for a month of the year or who knows what. So if there's anything that we can do at the municipal level to kind of get creative, get constructive, and encourage people to feel safer or confident or more reassured that they're, making a positive impact and possibly reaping a little bit of a benefit offering up long-term rentals, I think even a modest number of converts could make a difference in our community. Beyond that, I just thought it was, I thought it was really interesting to see what we have in common at the provincial level and then how much regional stuff there is. Thank goodness we don't have to deal with a lot of the heat stuff. I was complaining when it was like 25 degrees here, and then here the mayor of Ashcroft, I was just like, oh my goodness. So anyway, it was really entertaining and instructive, and I learned a lot, and it was super fun, and it was great. The mixers were overwhelming, but interesting conversations.
Yes, they will keep you busy from dawn until midnight if you let them. So it's all about pacing yourself. And I thought the theme was good this year. It was called Balancing Act, because that's what we do. We have to balance our lives to accommodate all the things that we do. That was it for your report?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. For me, September 6th, I attended the Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network meeting regarding transit, and it was all about Watt Consulting, and that's the bus service that's been contracted to start a bus service in January between Itatsu, Ucluelet, and all the way to Tofino and back. And a lot of talk was about the scheduling and where the buses are going to start and end, and what the bus stops will be, and all of the above. But that is that's an ACRD initiative. They did collect tax money from people assuming that BC Transit was coming online for a couple of years, and BC Transit bowed out, which we found out last year for any new projects like ours. But the ACRD did have some tax money to put toward this Watt Consulting that's going to provide a bus service for us. So it's not perfect, but it can be tweaked as the service progresses throughout next year to see how it's managing for people trying to get from Ucluelet to Tofino to get to work and back again and so forth. So that's all good information. September 12th, I attended a meeting that Josie Osborne called for local leaders, and it was regarding our request to the province and to the Prime Minister Trudeau to have a second road access to the West Coast. And Ministry of Transportation was there. There was really nothing that came out of that meeting. Ministry of Transportation has no jurisdiction over Horn Lake Road. That's Mosaic that owns that. And apparently it's not in good enough shape, even though it's a shorter detour route than the Lake Cowichan one. It's not in very good shape to allow the public to use. And Ministry of Transportation also said that they now have a 3-color alert on the Highway 4 Cameron Lake area, Angel Rock. Yellow means just proceed with caution, the road is fine. Orange means there's fist-sized rocks on the road, so really proceed with caution, and they would have pilot vehicles during that time. And red means the road is closed. So having said that, I just got notification today that despite the weather that we've had the last few days, Highway 4 is fine at Angel Rock. So Modi did say that they felt with all the tree clearing and rock clearing they've done that Angel Rock is in as good a shape as it was before the wildfire. So that's a little bit of comfort, I guess. But Ministry of Transportation is not going to promote the detour route unless Highway 4 is closed for 5 days or more. So that was disappointing, because that's cutting us off from all our doctor's appointments and whatnot again. So not much came out of that one. September 14th, Mr. Lawrence and Mr. Gregg and I attended Ucluelet First Nation meeting at their invitation over at their community hall. And the purpose was to update our protocol agreement with them and make it a little more robust to identify common things we're working towards and perhaps some deadlines and things like that. So that was an interesting meeting. Of course, I attended UBCM, and two of the tours I went on. Wednesday, I attended Covenant House, and that's right in downtown Vancouver. It's morphed from a 2-story building to an 8-story building. They just celebrated their 1-year anniversary of the new building back in July. And if you don't know what Covenant House does, there's kind of 2 streams. There's a stream for people that have a substance abuse and are interested in getting rid of it. And so they actually live here in this place. And then the other stream is for homeless people who maybe don't have a substance abuse, but they've come from an unfortunate situation at home. They only have room for 60 residents at any given time, and they turn people away every single day. So it just shows the need for places like this, especially in our larger urban areas. Anyway, it was a fabulous tour. I really enjoyed it because I always really wanted to know what Covenant House did, and they do a lot of great things for the 60 people that get to be there at any given time, and it's specifically for youth, and they define that as 16 to 24. So anyone that's resident there has to leave by their 25th birthday. And then the one on Thursday I did was the Takaya Cultural Canoe and Walking Tour, and that was over in Kate's Park. And that was really interesting. There was a lot of First Nations content in both sections, the canoe tour and the walking tour. So a lot of great information there. And I guess my other takeaway from UBCM, we had 2 meetings with the resort community mayors and CAOs. The first one was on Monday lunch, I guess. And then the second one was Friday morning breakfast with Minister Lana Popham of the Ministry of Tourism. And so our ask of the Ministry of Tourism was that the RMI program is great. It does not allow for improving our infrastructure, which our tourists are the ones that are taxing as much, if not more, than we are. And so we're looking at, it's not a formal proposal yet, but she was very accepting to hear what we wanted, and she said she would send our message forward to the Ministry of Finance to possibly have the MRDT increased a little bit and have some of that redistributed to the resort municipalities in order to have some money to help repair our infrastructure. So, yeah, I think we all came away feeling pretty good about that, but nothing formal yet. But it's the best we've had so far. Sunday, I was invited to the Praz Cultural and Heritage Festival closing ceremony. Their theme was a combination of logging and First Nations, and they wanted me to speak, so I spoke about our community forest. It's a perfect combination of logging and First Nations with our partners, the Toquat Nation. And so it wasn't well attended, unfortunately. It was kind of a rainy afternoon, but it was nice to be there with them. And then yesterday I met with Dr. Charmaine Enns, who's our medical health officer for the North Island, and just had a discussion about what our needs are. She did not know about our medical clinic that we're getting, but she does now. And so, yeah, we had a great discussion. And she lives in Tofino, so she didn't have to travel very far to get here. I think that's it for me. Tomorrow I have a Tourism Ucluelet meeting and an ACRD meeting, and I will bring up that garbage pickup when I'm there tomorrow. Any questions for me? Okay, question period. This is an opportunity for the public to ask questions about matters within Council's jurisdiction. Representations about matters that have been the subject of a public hearing are not permitted at this time. Are there any questions from the audience? No? Okay. Have we received any questions by Zoom or telephone, Mr. Rotenberg?
We do have one hand raised. Matt, I'm going to unmute you at this point in time. Okay, Matt, you are unmuted.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Awesome, it's Matt Harbridge, 1816 Peninsula. I missed it earlier, maybe it came up, I'm not sure, but the District Ucluelet housing, I'm just trying to figure out why the district is hiring an architect from Washington State to design our housing when I can easily look at the 5AU and see somebody there that can obviously do it more locally. We have, and there's lots of talent on the West Coast, Port Alberni even, things like that. I'm just trying to figure out why we're reaching so far to try to pay somebody out of country to design housing for our town.
We have Mr. Gregg at the podium here, so he may be able to answer your question.
Awesome, thank you.
Just Through the mayor, I was just going to note that that Doug Cole is a registered architect in the province of British Columbia. That yes, he works in both Washington State and BC, but he is an architect and has been doing a number of projects in Ucluelet. So there's definitely efficiency while he was in town, and it was part of the. We put out a request for proposals for the design work and some budgeting work to get the project to become shovel ready, and he was part of the successful team.
Does that answer your question, Matt?
Kind of. It's just really disappointing to see we're sending money so far away when local options are available. But that's just the way the world works, I guess. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions by Zoom or telephone?
So we do not have any other members of the public with their hands up in Zoom at this point in time.
Thank you. And have we received any questions by email to communityinput@ucluelet.ca?
I'm just updating the folder right now. We have not at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. I now move that the meeting be closed to the public in order to address agenda items under section 90 brackets 1 brackets E and brackets I of the community charter. E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements, if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. And I, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. So the meeting is now closed to the public at 5:50. Do I need a seconder? Councillor Kennington seconds. All in favor? None opposed. That carries. Thanks for coming, you guys.